Welcome to Equine-Assisted World. I'm your host, Rupert Isaacson, New York Times bestselling author of The Horseboy, The Long Ride Home and The Healing Land. Before I jump in with today's guest, I just want to say a huge thank you to you, our audience, for helping to make this happen. I have a request. If you like what we do, please like, subscribe, tell a friend. It really helps us get this work done. As you might know from my books, I'm an autism dad. And over the last 20 years, we've developed several equine-assisted, neuroscience-backed certification programs. If you'd like to find out more about them, go to newtrailslearning.com. So without further ado, let's meet today's guest. Welcome back to Equine-Assisted World. Today, I have autism mum and director of C.H.A.T.S in Virginia, which is an extremely cutting-edge equine-assisted outfit, McGavern, Dr. McGavern. And by doctor, I don't mean PhD, I mean physician. But also, as I said, autism mum. And she has a very interesting story to tell, not dissimilar from mine in some ways, in terms of being forced to do this out of necessity rather than because she woke up in the morning saying, well, I want to run an equine-assisted equine therapy unit. I don't think that was ever really on her list of dreams. However, what she's done with it over the last almost decade has brought our line of work into the mainstream for medicine. So I think we should let Megan talk about this. Hey, Megan, thanks for coming on.
Hi.
Tell us who you are, what you do.
I am an internal medicine physician, and I previously was an active duty Navy doctor before, I served my time and got out, and I've been in private practice ever since. And my first son, his name is Cole, and he's 13 now, but he's the one that's autistic. And then I have neurotypical twin boys, Sebastian and Ashton, they're 8. And Cole was not responding to the normal therapies that are recommended by physicians, whether they're family practice, pediatrician, developmentalist, neurologist. He wasn't. As a matter of fact, that he continued to regress as I added on therapy after therapy. He got diagnosed at age 4. And by age 5, he became failure to thrive, pretty much fully nonverbal. He might say 5 or 10 things in a day, but half of them were the same thing. May have been like go. I remember go. And then they threatened a feeding tube. They offered me inpatient care at a major medical center about an hour from here. And things got pretty bad by the age of 5. I read all the books from Cleveland Clinic and Harvard and all that stuff. And I was already doing all those things. And then I read Rupert's book, The Horseboy, and it was the only book. I think he was like the 7th or 8th book in, and it was the only one within 20, 25 pages. I was like, I've got to contact this man. And I happened to be on vacation, and I emailed him from the plane before it took off and eagerly awaited a response. And then I took Cole to New Trails in October with my husband. And, that's sort of a wrap. That's sort of how it all started.
Let's just dial back a little bit. When you say you tried all the therapies or the recommended therapies and Cole regressed, can you be a bit more specific? What did you try?
Okay.
And then how and why do you think he regressed?
Well, I think that he was just one of the many autistic children that don't necessarily respond to the few therapies that are, proven supposedly in clinical trials. But he was in special education in the school system. He was getting speech and OT at the school. He was getting speech and OT privately. He was getting ABA to the point that our insurance did not cover ABA at that time. So we were paying about $5,000 a month for ABA, which made him purely upset and pissed off the whole time. I mean, he'd stand there and be made to brush his teeth for 30 minutes. And it was just not a great scenario. I know that it can help many children, but it was not helping Cole. But when I say we gave it our best effort, my husband was working tons of extra shifts to pay for the ABA because that was pretty much the only thing we hadn't been doing prior to getting diagnosed at 4. We were already doing speech OT and the special education. We also added on brain balance, which is I thought a pretty well-researched neuroscience-based program. And we did that for like 2.5 years. I drove him, 45 minutes there and back twice a week. I also then had him in a feeding clinic that was an hour and a half, hour-ish away once a week when he became failure to thrive. Did that for 2 years. So I was doing all of those things and he continued to worsen. And I will say that occupational therapy, that has definitely helped him over time. I've actually followed and kept the same occupational therapist the entire time. He's only been with one person, and that has definitely helped. But like early on, it wasn't getting him anywhere. It was not helping the overall picture.
Why do you think he regressed and worsened under these therapies to the point of needing a feeding tube? And what do you think was going on with that?
Well, I mean, one of the major, there were a lot of things going on that, he would have meltdowns all the time. And at that point, we didn't know why or what was, but it was like he would have a meltdown for 45 minutes, couldn't do anything about it. And then you were okay, finally it was okay. And then it would happen again like an hour later. It was just like you were in a war zone all the time. One of the things that was going on with school was he would not eat at school. I mean, what kid can like function throughout the day and actually like have any progress when you won't eat? But he wouldn't eat for other people. His eating just got more and more narrow. It had to be with the exact person at the exact right time in the exact car seat or chair. I mean, if something was off, then he just wouldn't eat. And he surely wouldn't eat at school. We even tried. So I used to always want to get chili from Chili's restaurant, the grilled cheese and French fries. So I even literally like started getting that to go and then taking that to school. They even were nice enough and they know us so well because we would take him there. Cassie actually would take him there like every day.
Cassie being his main caregiver.
Yep. She would take him to Chili's from school so that he would finally eat. And then they like gave us the exact red baskets that they used, the paper, so that we could try and mimic it at school. And then he just wouldn't. Also, he took longer to potty train, like you mostly hear, but he did very well. I mean, he was potty trained by 4.5, which I think that's reasonable. But, he'd be at school and they'd tell me he peed his pants. Yeah, I just think it was the environment, they do their best, but I'm not putting any school system down or shame. They have limited resources. They have limited help. And I just don't think it was the right environment for him. I get phone calls all the time. Oh, he bit somebody again. Oh, he won't come back into the classroom after he tried to transition. I think the overall environment was too stressful for him. And then also just not eating all day. I mean, who can function like that,
Yeah.
I also found out this is what it is, but being in a specialized education classroom, you have various special needs kids in there. Some are screaming all day. Some are banging their heads all day. Some are aggressive, and I found out after the fact that, that there were some aggressive kids with him. He would come home and he'd have marks on him and the teachers wouldn't know where it was from. I think one of the reasons why when he transitioned to say music and then he'd have to go back into his main room, I think he didn't want to go back in because of the high stimulation that he was getting in there. That was just too much for him. I don't know. It was very, very miserable. And he could never, not like I could say, Cole, how was your day or what happened? I mean, there was nothing. So, sending your kid to a school where you don't know what's happening, you don't know how they're responding to when he when he bites one of the teachers or bites somebody else, like, it's just very, just always on edge, always feeling like, I don't know if I should be doing this. Maybe I should keep him home. Maybe I need to figure out how to homeschool him, even though I am a full-time career person and wanted nothing to do with homeschooling. Not that I think anything bad about it. I didn't want to give up my career to homeschool him. But it turns out I didn't have to. But that was like a very big fear for me then to figure out how the heck was I going to do that. And then when he turned 5, another thing that could have made him go worse, I don't know, was that the twins were born when he was 5. So I'm sure that was, potentially stressful for him.
Yeah.
Not right now, Cole. Go read a book. No.
So, okay, so school, I can understand this because Rowan, my son, went through a very similar thing. He began to, cry as I was driving him up to school. He began to really, really, really not want to go in there. And it got worse and it got worse. And then after we took a break from the local special ed school, we tried again at sort of the hippiest school we could find in a lovely naturey place in Austin. And he just, at that point, just flat out, he was verbal enough to say he took off all his clothes, rolled around in the dirt and said, I want to be a countryside boy. And that was even with him being sent with a caregiver. And I was like, dude, I hear you loud and clear. All right, we'll do it. And of course, we'd never look back. But like you, I do not want to homeschool. But I kind of did. But like you, and listeners will get there, that you can kind of homeschool and not homeschool at the same time. It's actually possible to hit this really interesting middle ground, but we'll get there in a minute. So just hold on for that. Let's go to the ABA. Why do you think the therapists were so pushy with him and so uncompromising? Why do you think they were not willing to work around and take a less pressure-filled approach? What was going on with?
I'm not sure, but I do know that we were getting therapists that were barely even trained. Like, it was, at least in our area, there was a long wait list, and then you get in with somebody and they'd say, oh yeah, they have somebody come out for you. And then the person that would come out, like, literally just finished their training. And I just don't think they had the experience
Right. But it seems that, because we went through this as well with Rowan, that we had a very experienced ABA therapist, for example, but this person was not only unwilling to modify anything for Rowan, no matter, as you were talking about how distressed Cole was getting, Rowan would literally try to climb through the wall. And I remember thinking, wow, I'm a horse trainer. If I am in a round pen with a horse and the horse is trying to climb out over the fence to get away from me, I will at least change something that I'm doing, because just from a purely selfish perspective, I could get killed in that situation. But that's such an extreme reaction that it's telling one loud and clear that something needs to change, something needs to be modified, And I remember when we would suggest this, we would get a very aggressive pushback rather than, well, okay, I don't know your kid, I'm not terribly experienced. What do you suggest? Or can we talk about this together? And there was no allowance of the family, the parent, the kid to have any kind of voice. So although I can imagine that, some of these people coming out to you, sure, were young and inexperienced, they were also human beings with some common sense. What do you think was preventing them from just being able to exercise that compassion and common sense and just?
I think that they were just trying to follow the protocol of what they were supposed to do and what they were what they were taught. And I don't think they knew how, I don't.
Yeah.
To be honest, I think that a BCBA gets paid a lot of money compared to like some other things in the medical field. And I think a lot of people look at that and like, oh, well, I can get trained quickly. It's like $10, $12 more per hour than what I would be able to make was with a different type of medical job. And I honestly, I see that frequently just as a physician. So I'm not even sure the people that are, coming in that profession are necessarily people that really have the heart for what they're doing. I think it pays well. I mean, it does. It's a well-paying job, and they train you, and it's a quick to take. Again, I'm not trying to. I don't want to. I don't want to put down ABA at all because I know plenty of kids where it has totally helped them, and they are, fully functional now and independent. I'm not trying to. This is just my experience with it for about 2.5 years. That's all. We had multiple people come because they could. I don't know. It was just not a great experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So then he ends up on a feeding tube, and
He does not. He does not.
sorry, he ended up on as failure to thrive.
He was. Yep. He lost 8 pounds at 5 years of age.
Okay, that's a lot at that age. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're sort of looking down the barrel of a feeding tube, basically. Then you came out to New Trails. And I remember when we first met that two things really stood out. Obviously, apart from the, just how big of a struggle you were going through. One was when I first met Cole, I remember thinking, wow, this is a tough cookie. This is somebody who I don't know. I don't know if I can do anything here. And I remember being pretty upfront about that and just be like, I don't know, but let's give it a try. At least the environment will be different. This we know. And there'll be certain things that can happen with the horse. This we know. But I was rather worried that he would hand me my ass. And, but the other thing which I remember you saying to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, was that you had actually been told, or at least advised, not to give or to withhold physical affection from him if he didn't comply. I remember that being said, and I remember thinking, I can't compute why any sort of mental health professional for children would say something like that. And that brought me up short because I had also had these bad experiences, the same experiences as you with ABA and some other behavioral types of therapy. And at that point, I remember thinking, the paradigm needs to shift because it's as if people are saying the kids are naughty, as if they're making some sort of decision here to be bad, as if they can actually understand and follow top-down instruction and are just somehow deciding not to, which means that the entire landscape is just being so completely misunderstood.
Yeah.
And, I remember thinking, gosh, if even a Navy physician can be kind of pushed into that corner a little bit, then it just shows the power of the influence that people can wield over people that are desperate. And that made me sad. And it also made me angry. And it made me determined to not give up. Can you give us, in your words, like you were at New Trails for 5 days, I believe. And this was, of course, a radically different environment. You'd had to take this very, very difficult human from Virginia to Texas. That's a long way. And into the unknown. You arrive as a bunch of hippies, with ponies in the fields. What were your impressions of those 5 days?
I remember, so this is what I vividly remember was first day, I think we talked towards the end of the morning or something. And I remember that I was so overwhelmed and I started to well up with tears and I was telling you that I was doing speech therapy and occupational therapy and special education. He was getting that at the school and I'm doing brain balance and I'm going to the feeding clinic and the brain balance stuff was not just 2 days a week there. It was also every day at home. I had to do all these exercises and have them smell these different oils and have them listen to this certain vibration. I mean, it was like my life was consumed by all this. And I just remember like you saying, "Y- it's okay to like take a step back and reevaluate and maybe all this isn't needed and there's a different way to sort of look at it." And then I remember also that first morning where there was a swing set there and was the name Vonda. I can't remember the girl's name, but he didn't want to go on the swing set. And I didn't really know what movement method was at that point. And she was just trying to follow the child, right? And I'm like, Cole loves the swing set. Come on, Cole, you would go on the swing. Come on, here, take the swing. Meanwhile, I'm supposed to be like, I didn't know what movement method was at that point where, and Vanna was just trying to follow him and so I was like, no, he really likes to swing. Here, come on, Cole. And I put him on the swing, and then I realized like by the end of the week, I was like, oh gosh, Megan, you're stupid. You're doing the exact wrong thing. And then that same morning, and I still like will post a video of this on social media when it comes up, but he went on the horse and the biggest smile, like that you can imagine from cheek to cheek. And he laughed. And I mean, my God, I hardly ever heard it. I hardly ever saw a smile. I hardly ever heard the laugh. I mean, he was just always like, it was just hell, like all the time. And sadness, you couldn't do any normal stuff. And I was just like, oh my gosh. Oh my, we and I were like, on the video, I'm like, look, he's smiling, look. Like I was just like, the mom voice, like screaming loud like I do. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And then the next day it was like the same thing. So we came in the morning for 5 days straight and it was like 3-hour sessions, I think. And so by the end of the second day, that session, we called home and canceled ABA. It was just like a clear, I felt empowered by you saying, well, it's okay to try and change it. Just because this isn't working doesn't mean there's not something else, or maybe, pull back on some of these things and just focus on this one thing. It doesn't have to be all this like 7,000 things that you're trying to do all the time. And so I felt like empowered that, yeah, I already was following my gut, but I was so worried that if I wasn't doing all these treatments that, are supposed to help, that then what if he wouldn't get somewhere because I stopped one of them because I felt like it wasn't working. So I just sort of needed somebody else to say that to me. And then, so we called home that afternoon and canceled ABA, which was like a big decision to make after, because you felt like that's what you're just told over and over, to do ABA to help with all the behavioral part of it. So that was like the biggest things that I remember from that week.
And then what happened when you did go home?
Well, funny enough, so when I came home, the plan was, always a plan, but the plan never happens. The plan was that we were going to take him out of school come January. So we were going to have him finish he was just starting first grade. He'd only been in it for like 6 weeks. And so I'm like, okay, this is going to give me some time. I want to prepare. I want to find people to help me implement movement method and implement a movement method program here. And what happens? Like about a week and a half after we get back, I get a phone call from the school again. He bit a teacher and the teacher's pregnant because, he didn't want to go back into the classroom again. It was like a transition thing. And it was like mid-morning, I'm at work, I'm in the middle of seeing patients. And, it's just like, you feel bad. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, but at the same time, it's like, enough is enough. And I'm not going to swear, but enough is effing enough. And I called my husband and I'm crying and I'm like, done. We can't do this anymore. I can't get another phone call. I can't do this anymore. He's not okay there. This isn't okay. I'm going to take him out. And my husband agreed with me. And then all of a sudden I take him out and there was no preparation. And then I call you and I'm flipping out. And I'm like, this was like a Thursday, and I call Rupert, and I'm like, and then you're talking about, well, there's whole books on unschooling to schooling and to go to your favorite places like Florida and whatever, and teaching about the ocean and all this stuff. And I'm like, I didn't know you well enough then, but I was like, I'm going to murder you, Rupert. I'm going to murder you. I want to plan. I want to plan now. I am a preparer. I am type A. Like, I don't want to hear about unschooling. I need to know, like, how do I figure out the curriculum? How do I blah, blah, blah. And I was like freaking out. And your phone call was just like trying to get me to like totally get out of that mindset. And then it was, you were all like correct about all that, but it was very hard to just have this big open, oh, what the hell am I doing now? Like, oh my gosh, what am I doing now? Like, how am I going to do this? And also, mind you, at the same time, I had newborn, well, they were like 12 months old twins taking care of and still working full time. So, I mean, I was just like, I don't know how the hell I'm going to do this. But that's pretty much what happened not long after I went to New Trails.
Now, you did have one secret weapon at home. You had a very important person who's still very, very big in Cole's life. You had Cassie. You had a caregiver who was, by happy accident, by chance, by God, whatever, but devoted. When you had to pull Cole out of school,
Mhm.
you presumably also, you didn't just ring me, you also sat down with Cassie.
Yeah.
Talk us through that conversation, because both of you must have been thinking, shit, okay, what are we going to do? This is sort of outside of both our experiences, but here it is. All right, talk us through a little bit that.
Well, I mean, I would say first she was very supportive, and she was also, experiencing the same thing I was going through with him and seeing him. It was very sad. It was very hard, and so, I think she stayed supportive. That wasn't a hard thing at all. The harder part was at that time I was still very private about his diagnosis. Like, my family still didn't even know, because for me, like, oh, I'm a smart doctor. I'm going to implement all these therapies. Certainly by this birthday, he's going to be talking again. I kept, not fix him in, I'm going to say that in quotes, but like, I'm going to fix the issue. Like, I'm reading everything I'm trying to. And I kept thinking, oh, well, surely by 3, then every birthday that came, it was just sadder and sadder. So I didn't really have the desire, or I thought it would be a bad idea, because if family found out from me advertising that I'm looking for, someone, a homeschool assistant that's interested in being trained in movement method and stuff, that then they would find out. And I just wasn't ready to tell. I just wasn't ready to tell them yet. I am still a very private person, but this has had to make me be very public. And that was a difficult transition. But now I realize, like, how alone I was then. And I have these moms that come out, especially on Sensory Saturdays. I spend a lot of time with the parents there while their kids are enjoying the event. And I'm just like, everything that they're saying, especially like the newly diagnosed kids with their moms, and how alone they feel, and how so upsetting, the best friend, their kid's neurotypical, but we can't do anything together, whatever. And I realize now how lonely that was. And, probably would have gone, maybe I wouldn't have felt so sad if I had opened up to a bigger support group, but that just wasn't on my radar.
This is one of the big issues. And I think anyone who's working in because you and I are colleagues now, knows this, which is the big kicker is loneliness, as you say,
Yeah.
and isolation. Because if you've got the kid who takes a shit in the supermarket while you're standing in line, that you can only do that so many times with everybody
Right.
looking at you before you start not going to the supermarket if you can avoid it. And so at most therapy places, the parents don't meet each other, so that there isn't any possibility for community or connection. And the online community is okay. Well, they're better than nothing, but it's not the same. So,
Oh, may I interject there too? Also, I did go to like like a support thing where like they were met at Panera, and we and I went one time.
We being your
But
husband, right?
yes,
Listeners, he's Vietnamese American.
mhm.
So his name, We, is from there. So if you're just wondering, if that's an exotic sounding name, that's where it comes from. Okay, so you're at Panera and?
Yeah, we're at Panera, and then it was just like as soon as they found out we were physicians, I
Ah.
don't know. I just, then there were medical questions being asked of me and all this. And then I was no longer there as the parent, right? I was there as, oh, well, what do you think of it? They was not supportive at all. I never went back again. So I just felt even more violated from a privacy standpoint because now all these people in this particular area know that Dr. McGavern, whose office is right there, her son's autistic. I don't know. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. I just felt so private about it then
Well,
that,
as you
I,
say, that
I-
it's all about timing. What one is
yeah,
ready for emotionally when one's ready for it, and not before. What can you say?
yeah.
I hear you. So, okay, so you take the big step. You stop the ABA. You implement movement method. Presumably,
Mhm.
it's working, or you wouldn't have kept going with it.
Oh, yeah.
So, what were the first things? Because at this stage, there's no horses involved. So, listeners, don't
Okay.
worry. Horses are going to come into the picture, and they're going to come into the picture in a big way. Uh, but early on, picture this is suburban America. It's a nice suburb, and yes, sure, the countryside isn't far away, but this is not farm country. And so, Megan, you're there, and talk us through a little bit your the issues you would have at home, and talk us through a little bit what you did with movement method in those early stages.
Okay. Well, so one of the first things that happened after that was that you sent Julia and Julian to me, and they stayed in my house for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And so they basically helped me set up. They went to local places. They started it and started taking Cole every morning to some nature area. I spent, a good bit of money, like getting a membership at the Virginia Living Museum where I took you one time, and he used to, he doesn't go there as much anymore, but that used to be a very common spot. And just money on like setting up the homeschooling stuff and what I needed to get and all of that, and that was very helpful. And then I just was trying to hire people sort of on the down low, just because, again, I didn't want it to be publicly advertised. And I went through a couple people. Cassie was sort of overseeing, what was going on and involved and knowing what was going on. And so, pretty much he'd have sessions every morning. And that's still what he does to date. He has sessions every morning, pretty much from like, say, 8 to 12, where he's, outside somewhere or whatever it is. But his session is pretty much somewhere between 8 and 9 to 12. And then when the horse got added in, then there was me in the afternoon, every afternoon after work. So it was like twice a day kind of thing.
But what did
But
you notice? What were the improvements with the movement method? Like, why did you think, yeah, okay, this is working, I'm going to stick with this?
well, I started, number one, being able to actually realize that he knows things, like to academically measure what he knows, because there was none of that honestly going on in his special education classroom. Just because I think they were, there's what, 6, 7 kids with their own individual IEPs and just trying to put out fires all day. So I saw him like being able to, I learned what he likes with learning. For example, he loves puzzles. I knew that beforehand, but he loves Velcro. Like if you laminate answers and have Velcro dots and then you pick the answer, like you hold up 2 answers and then you let him pick the answer and put it on the thing. That's how I started knowing, oh, he knows that's Jacques Cousteau and not Theodore Roosevelt, like for every subject. Also magnets. He loves magnets. So when it's that age, first grade, they still have tons of those kinds of things. We used Oriental Trading Company. I still use them a lot, not necessarily for schooling anymore, but that is a super cheap resource that has all those kinds of things and different ways to learn. But I started basically individualizing his curriculum. I do that every year now. Like it's just become that's the routine of my summer. I order everything that I want to do in June, and then I go through it, and then I have curriculum planning meetings until he starts again in September. So I started seeing him basically, tell me that he knew stuff. Not necessarily verbally. The verbal part didn't come until the horse. But as far as like him not getting upset or the meltdowns all the time or all of that, that started to calm down. And then again, academically, I started to be able to know that like he did know what I was asking him. He just couldn't verbally say it. Or didn't,
Do you
not
think he started
couldn't,
to feel
didn't.
heard and seen?
Say that again.
You think he started to feel heard and seen?
Yeah, I think so. I think definitely taking him out of that environment, the environment that he was not doing well in. Yes, I think so. And it was also helpful because, I mean, the eating thing was still going on, but it was, starting to get better. But, it wasn't like he was going all day without eating anymore.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember when I made my first visit up to you, it was not as severe as it had been in Texas, but it was still
Yeah.
pretty extreme. You had the pool in the backyard, and he was in it for hours at a time, maximum energy. And I remember looking at him and going, "Wow, that was the energy he was taking to a special ed classroom." Just
Right.
no way they'd have been able to handle that, like with the best will in the world. But being able to teach through that suddenly, that not being something you're fighting, that being something you can go with. The other thing I remember was when I was there, him disappearing into a neighbor's house across the street naked and just sort of wandering through. And, that even though this is south of the Mason-Dixon line, Virginia, it's people are gun happy and property proud and all of that stuff. And it's listeners who are not American, it's dangerous. It's dangerous to enter other people's property,
Yeah.
even sometimes as a kid. And can be equally dangerous to go and retrieve them. And I remember you were still going through that, but things were clearly better. And
Right.
was, exhibiting. I remember, you were really following his Thomas the Tank Engine obsession and beginning to teach him literacy through that and so on. And
Right.
I remember
Right.
thinking, wow, she's really on it. But then you flummoxed me because then I was like, okay, well, this is good. This is definitely, 75% better than what we were seeing in Texas. But then you call me up, you say, yeah, but Rupert, there's got to be horses. And I'm like, well, why? Because, this oxytocin and BDNF effect that we're talking about, for neuroplasticity, you can get this without horses. And remember, most of the time with Rowan, I wasn't on the horse, I was having to implement what's now called movement method at home, so even if Rowan was really into the horse, I still had to do all this stuff off the horse. And, you're not a horseman. So it's kind of irrelevant really because, there's no horseboy place in your neighborhood. And okay, you could try some other therapeutic riding stuff, but chances are, it won't necessarily be an environment where they'll allow him to be him. But you wouldn't take no for an answer. Why?
Because I saw how he responded on the horse. That's why. I saw how I hadn't seen him like that with pretty much anything else except for Thomas the Train. But that's why I just felt like this was my shot at potentially getting him to speak. And I was going to do whatever I needed to do to give him that shot.
So listeners, I want you to put yourself in my shoes, me as Rupert right now. So Megan, as you can imagine, is a strong personality and somewhat of an achiever. And so I begin to get communication saying, yeah, but look, Rupert, I've got to get a horse and I've got to, get this together. And I'm like, no, Megan, you don't, because you don't know from horses. And this is decades and decades and decades of experience needed. And particularly for this kind of work, the stakes are so high and, no. It's going to cost it's going to cost you ridiculous money, and you still won't know if you have to set up your own show, and you don't know how to, and you won't even know, you won't know how to hire the right staff, and you won't know if they're even doing the right job, and they'll walk all over you because horsey people are like that, and it's just not safe, So no, I'm sorry, we're going to stick with movement method. And I remember several of these communications. What and I was being pretty reasonable with that. I, and movement method is, we've had obviously, a lot of success with that with people who've never, touched a horse, seen a horse. So again, the equine assisted side, and I have great faith in your decision now with everything that's happened. But what was going on? There was something. It wasn't just what you'd observed. I think there must have been something in your gut. What was going on in your gut
Oh,
that was
my gut was telling me I needed to do this.
because I was giving you, because you knew that what I was telling you when I was trying to talk you out of it, you knew that that was truth. You knew that that was, you try to
Right.
look
But I
after your
mean,
best interest, right?
yeah, yeah. But I mean, my perspective is, well, I can handle it. I can do it. I will get the
To
people
all
I
the
need
horsey
to.
people chuckling as they drive, listening to this.
Right, right. I mean, I felt like I could do. I mean, I don't know. I've accomplished a lot in my life. I mean, I'm not going to speak about myself here, but there was no reason that I couldn't do this when I've done other things. That was my bottom line. And if this is going to make it so that my kid can talk or potentially become independent or potentially go to college one day, I mean, it was not even a question. There was no question. I never doubted my thought about that. I was following my gut instinct and I knew my ability to achieve. And that was the end of it.
Yeah, it's the only
On
time.
my side of you're asking me like what was
Yeah, yeah.
why was I still that was my side of it, like how I was viewing it.
Because, I was being absolutely upfront. I was like, it's going to cost you more money than you can possibly imagine it's going, because
Right.
you have to learn from scratch.
Right.
And what happened was, listeners, I was adamant that we weren't going to do it because I was like, I can't put my name to that. It'll just go horribly wrong. No, it's this. You've got to remember, this is also 1,000 miles away from where I live. It's not like it's just down the road and I can, pop in and make sure everything's going okay. But what happened was, you talked me into it, Megan, and I still, to this day, can't believe that I got talked into it. And then what I said was, all right, I'm level with you. This is pretty much what it'll cost you if you do this, because you're gonna have to buy land. You're gonna have to, you're gonna have to look at all that eventually, because you're gonna have to
Yeah.
control the environment. You can't just like, okay, you might start by boarding a horse somewhere, but you'll not be, you won't find that those people are tolerant of your kid. And even if they are, they won't know how to create a safe environment for him.
Right.
They won't not run the tractor when he's around, or the leaf blower, or the chainsaw, or the put up the dog, or whatever, or, let alone what other people are doing with horses, and him running into the arena, naked, and
Right.
they're not
Right.
going to be sympathetic.
No.
And then I thought, well, but if you do this, the only way it can work is if the horse has been trained by us, and not just trained by us, but has been with us for a long time, and we like really. So I thought, we actually have to give up one of our best horses for this, a horse that I know can operate without us. And as anyone listening knows, and as you now know, Megan, those horses are like gold.
Right.
Don't let them go. I don't sell horses. You are the only person I've ever sold a horse to. I have donated some horses. I've loaned some horses to be schoolmaster horses in other places, but take them back if I need to. But I've never ever sold a horse before. And I remember me and Ileana going, can we do without Mahanya? This is the only horse that was cool enough, quiet enough to know that, and well trained enough in the collection to give the oxytocin effect that brings speed. But okay, so we did it. And against my better judgment, we did it. And can you talk us through what happened from when you first got Mahania to where you are now? Because the thing I want you guys to know, listeners, is that Megan is in no way my client. Megan is in every way my colleague. And we meet as equals on this. But as you can imagine, it was a steep learning curve. So take us through that steep learning curve, Megan.
Okay. So she arrived April of 2018, and I boarded her locally and hired a horse person, hired another like teacher, home assistant type person, and
Who we trained in our methods.
right. Sorry. And then we started taking him out every day.
Not that it did any good. Sorry.
What that?
Not
What
that
did
it
that?
did any good.
Yeah, right.
If you're in the equine-assisted field, or if you're considering a career in the equine-assisted field, you might want to consider taking one of our 3 neuroscience-backed equine-assisted programs. Horseboy Method, now established for 20 years, is the original equine-assisted program specifically designed for autism, mentored by and developed in conjunction with Dr. Temple Grandin and many other neuroscientists. We work in the saddle with younger children, helping them create oxytocin in their bodies and neuroplasticity in the brain. It works incredibly well. It's now in about 40 countries. Check it out. If you're working without horses, you might want to look at movement method, which gets a very, very similar effect, but can also be applied in schools, in homes. If you're working with families, you can give them really tangible exercises to do at home that will create neuroplasticity when they're not with you. Finally, we have taquine equine integration. If you know anything about our programs, you know that we need a really high standard of horsemanship in order to create the oxytocin in the body of the person that we're working with, child or adult. So this means we need to train a horse in collection, but this also has a really beneficial effect on the horse's well-being. And it also ends your time conflict where you're wondering, oh my gosh, how am I going to condition my horses and maintain them and give them what they need, as well as serving my clients? Taquine equine integration, aimed at a more adult client base, absolutely gives you this.
And then we started taking him out every day and teaching him in the woods, hanging things up on the trees, like his schooling and everything. And I mean, just everything started to change. I still actually have all the notebooks for years, I have probably 4 years worth of notebooks. I would track everything he said at every session. And then if it was sessions where I wasn't there, like the morning sessions, I would have the people working for me track it as well. So, I mean, I literally have the hardcore data of the words he was saying. And it went from, 25 words in an hour on the horse to 50 to 200 to, 400. It was a clear, this was it. This was making him become verbal. On top of that, I paid to have a sand arena built at that place that we were boarding. And I really think that is why he was able to walk on sand for the first time, like shortly. I think that was like that was the same. Yeah, that was just a few months after he was riding Mahania. He loved the ocean, but you could never go to the beach. It didn't matter if he was standing on a towel, if he was on a chair. I mean, he would just flip out. Your whole time would be ruined. There was no point in going because you'd either have to stay in the ocean the entire time or you would just have to leave because you couldn't just sit there and relax on the beach. And it was one of my husband and I's, favorite things to do. That's what we would do on vacations. And we had to stop going. Again, very isolating, and very hard. But I really think the walking on Mahania, trotting, cantering in the arena on the sand is what changed it, because that he started riding her in May. And by September, it was the twins' second birthday, and they still had never been to the beach. I'm like, screw it. We're going to Virginia Beach. We're like, 45 minutes from there. They're going to see the ocean for the first time, even if it's a shit show and he flips out. we're going to be there for like 15 minutes and they're going to see it. And it was that time we were ready for just a complete awful whatever, but at least we had done it. And all of a sudden he just started running on the sand, sitting and letting the sand like go up in his bathing suit, letting the water, like, it was unbelievable. I mean, I just couldn't believe it. I hurried up and grabbed my phone and I'm doing my mom screaming again. And it was just like, is this happening right now? And then we were there for like 3 hours. It was unreal. But so verbally, the meltdown started really going away. The academics were just improving and improving. And then the eating. So I did this eating clinic from what would have been 2016 to maybe about 2018. Mahanya came and yeah, I stopped it shortly after Mahanya came because I mean, it was unreal. His palate markedly changed. I was able to get so many different things in him. I also started working with Jonathan Tommy.
Right. Just quickly
Yeah.
for listeners, Jonathan Tommy's a very, very skilled nutritionist and also autism dad who we knew well in Austin, who had gotten some really great improvements with many children, including his son who'd been nonverbal. So if you are wanting to know more about his work, Jonathan Tommy, please do contact us. All right. So Megan, keep going. So
Okay. So he started eating so much more, like the variety of things improved. He started to, I was able to make these pizzas, like it was a frozen pizza that was gluten free, but then I could add like these different meats. I mean, I couldn't get meat in him for years. I was able to add meat to it and veggies to it. And I mean, I couldn't do that. I mean, he was so malnourished for a long time, but just like all of that, like the whole picture started changing. I'm not saying that it was still not difficult. Obviously, a huge amount of effort on my standpoint from many levels, but and there was still all the things like behaviors and things we were doing. But I'm just saying, like big time stuff, like academics, eating again, being able to go to the ocean and not have to stay in the ocean the entire time. Like those were big things to us, and talking.
When I was joking earlier and saying much good it did, what I meant was not the improvements that came with the horse, which were remarkable. But as you found out, horsey people are tricky.
Yeah. Yeah.
And finding the right people is difficult,
Yeah.
and that's very difficult if you're coming not from a place of authority on horses and you're having to hire people who know more than you do.
Right. Yeah, that was rough.
Yeah. But you weathered it, and you weathered it amazing. And something else, listeners, is those of you who know Horseboy Method know that in order to get horses that are strong enough to ride with a kid, in order to get horses that can collect, to give that oxytocin effect, you've got to put enormous amounts of muscle on them. So you need to know lunging, you need to know in-hand work. And so I diligently, as did others, sort of insisted that Megan, in addition to her full-time doctoring, mothering for other 2 children, and all the rest of it, learn to do these things, which is sort of quite advanced horsemanship. And you did.
Yes.
You went, and what was so interesting to me about those early years with Mahanya is I saw you. I mean, okay, she was a schoolmaster horse, but I saw you able to take on work that I often have trouble getting really seasoned horse people to do. And you just went for it and followed it to the letter. And so even though I was uneasy, and I would then come back up on other visits and go, damn, this horse looks really good. You're really doing it. And I watch you lunging her and taking her through the in-hand patterns and the long reining and think, Megan, this is like someone who's been around horses. Or that it was almost like you were downloading something. And then when I started teaching you how to ride, like from the first day, I was like, are you sure you haven't done this before? You know, like
Yeah, no.
it was, you were a natural. And I remember thinking, is there some other force moving through Megan? Because it shouldn't, I mean, you remember I was saying, I was kind of like, it shouldn't be happening like this. It shouldn't be. Yet it did. Okay.
Right.
So you persevered, and you persevered then in a livery yard, but in a boarding stable. What were the challenges of doing this in that situation?
Well, again, personalities, like you said, for example, when we were first getting call on Mahanya, like he wouldn't that was a joke to wear riding pants, but he actually wouldn't even put the shorts on. So we're like, you know what? Just let him wear his underwear. I mean, he's only, what would he have been in 2018, 27? He was 7 years old. I mean, how's that any different than wearing like the European bathing suits, whatever those are called, or like, or even like when you're competing in a swim competition, you would wear those. I mean, what the
Speedos.
heck was the difference? He's 7. Yeah, Speedos. But of course, other families that were there, had something to say. The person that I initially hired, unfortunately, was one of the people that you would not want to work with, and it became a very like manipulative, malignant situation, and I let her go. And then, I found people, and I have steadily continued to find people. But one of the things, like I learned prior to ever starting this, was, to be a good leader, you need to know how all of the jobs that are underneath you. You need to know how to be the secretary. You need to know how to be the phlebotomist. You need to know what they do. You need to know how to make it go round in case they're not there. And that was something like I learned early on with this, like, people can leave at any point in time. And initially, I didn't have contracts for any of the employees. And then I got burned a few times, and I was like, I sent one girl out to Bianca to be trained in Colorado, and she like had this like amazing time. And then like a month later, she decided, oh yeah, I mean, I paid for airfare, her training. I mean, it was a joke. I mean, it was just a joke. I was like, are you kidding me right now? And that was when I finally changed to having contracts, because, again, people find boyfriends, people move for reasons, parents become ill, whatever. Everybody has life circumstances, but, I still needed to make this world go around every single day for Cole. And part of that was making sure the horse was trained every day, staying strong, being I had to learn all of that. Now, I might not know the 5 million ways how to make a horse do X, Y, and Z, but I can absolutely implement what you showed me. I can, once I see it, I've got it, and I know this. And when I bring new horse people on, I will say, Lee here knows blah, 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 but I know that you need to be able to make the horse look like this. And then I demonstrate for them and I show them. And, so because again, even where I'm at now at this level, I'm still not like an equestrian for 40 years or something. I'm not. And I fully will own that to any of the employees, But again, I say, but I know what this niche is. I might not know what those words are when you're talking about I don't know a lot of like the other horse breed stuff, or I don't know that, but I know this niche, and I know this niche well. And at least the basics of what they need to do to maintain to be strong for the child, strong so they don't get injured. And, and, that's that. I'm happy to take opinions. I'm happy to whatever, but at the end of the day, I'm going to take all of your opinions and then make an educated decision, because it is hard. That every horse person, they all have, the horse has some problem, and you'll have 6 different people, including the vet, tell you something different. And it's like, you just want to stick a fork in your eye. Like, how can you all think that there's 6 different things going wrong, and you're adamant that I'm just like, all right, and then you can't get upset if like I don't go with your opinion. I'm doing the best that I can. And it's just, it's a lot. It's a lot of personalities to deal with. Finding the right people that, aren't going to like smack the shit out of your kid when they,
Yes.
spit in their face, or, have a meltdown, or, or that aren't gossiping,
Yeah.
it is that part that, definitely that's a lot. But I'm also in a different space now than before, because I know a lot more, and I also know what I'm willing to tolerate and what I'm not willing to tolerate. Before, I had to tolerate whatever the hell I could get just to keep it going. Because again, we've got to remember that Cole is autistic and Cole is very much need the routine. If he doesn't go to the horse that day, like there's a, or he doesn't go out to the barn or whatever, there's a there's a meltdown, there's a potential meltdown, and then especially early on, if there was ever like a day that was potentially missed, I felt very panicky because I'm like, that's a day where, he could have started talking even more, or that was a day missed in just making this early intervention, like in the younger ages. So I was always just so like, wait, I would do anything to make it keep going. I would do anything because I saw what was happening, and I'm like, I can't, whatever it takes, basically, whatever personalities I have to deal with, despite sometimes feeling like I was going to oh my gosh, how can I keep going on like this? I can't stand all this personality stuff, but I still, you just got to regroup and move forward with it.
Yeah, horse people are not easy. I wish it were otherwise. Luckily, I would say that within the horseboy community, luckily, we have phenomenal people like you. But yeah, the vast majority of the horse world, it's pretty judgmental and pretty cutthroat. And so I was very worried, that you were going to enter that world with such a vulnerable kid and everything at stake. Yeah, you did. And okay, so you then weathered those early years at the boarding barn, and then you decided to do something a little bit radical. Talk us through that.
Well, I mean, truly, those personalities are probably what pushed me to be like, okay, I clearly know that I need to continue this. This is working. This is going to make my son as independent as possible and verbal as possible. But I can't stay in this situation here. Like, I would loathe going out there every day. I'm like, it's already hard enough to do and to deal with everything I have to deal with him. I don't need to go there and feel like stressed out the whole time and wondering if something's going to happen with another person or they're going to say something, I just don't need that. I mean, this is hard enough and sad enough and everything enough. So we started looking for land, and, we were told, oh, there's no land near here. You're going to have to go to Gloucester, which is like 45 minutes away. It would just not be doable from any standpoint, from me being
And I
able
just
to
want to,
go
I just want to interject there again for listeners, where the bit of Virginia where Megan lives, close to Virginia Beach, so not being able to go to the beach, particularly in those humid, hot summers, must have been hell. But it is tricky to find land there because it's a bunch of small little peninsulas and swampland that sort of jut out into the Chesapeake
Yeah.
Bay area. It's not the rolling horse country that you think of when you think of Virginia. So land is actually not that easy to come by. Okay, so off you go.
Right. So, as soon as we started looking, everybody was again being negative, and I kept looking, and then all of a sudden it happened. Bianca actually came when she was out one time. We looked at a couple properties.
Bianca Rimbach, one of our
Mhm.
best trainers and therapists. Yeah. Okay, go on.
Yeah. And that didn't end up being the place that we had found. But yeah, we found a place that was just like a blank canvas to create. There was nothing on it. And it was like 17 and a half acres and lakes on either side of it. It's like a big rectangle. And then there's lakes on either side, pretty well hidden. You can't see anything from the main road or anything. And so we found it, and then we bought it in August of 19. And then there was the transition of, starting to build out there, which didn't happen until like end of January of 2020. And we paid to have a barn built, a covered arena, and two paddocks built. And that was where we started. And that was a shit ton of money, of course, but again, long-term vision in mind. And then, I'd also already had purchased Neuron. You had gone and found Neuron and took him back to Germany. And so I'd already started paying for Neuron. And then with what you had going on, I guess, with New Trails and some of the horses were being dispersed in places, you had talked to me about Diego.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned about like maybe, would I want to, anyway, I decided, I know I still wanted to keep Neuron, and I would I would take Diego as well because we couldn't have Mahania there by herself, right? And thank God that honestly, thank God that happened because we transitioned there April of 20 and Narrowan wasn't, I don't remember when Narrowan came, but I think it was like May of 21 or June of 21, May of 21. So, I mean, what would we have even done if we didn't have, and I was not of any interest in boarding I was getting away from public. That there will never be a boarding facility at this place. Never. I don't want any parts of that. So that was not an option to me because I didn't want to have to deal with any other personalities. I just wanted to deal with the stress I had for Cole, basically. So thank God that happened because then we were able to transition there and then Mahania and Diego were our horses there for a while. And then we started the nonprofit. So September of 20, we applied for nonprofit 501c3 and we got approved. That was during COVID. So that was interesting. And then to get the 501c3 status, you apply for that, but we didn't actually find out that for a year after. So technically, start getting grants and support. I couldn't even really start doing that until September of 21. It literally took a whole year, I guess, because of COVID and delays in manpower and stuff that we found out after the fact. But
so then you suddenly find yourself with two good horses, one on the way, an environment that you can control out there in nature, facilities put in, and you can breathe to some degree a sigh of relief. Why do you then create a nonprofit and open this place up to the public?
well, I think that being a physician, it was very frustrating for me to go to the doctor again, no matter what specialist it was, and they had nothing else to tell me, like there was no other suggestions when what I was doing was not working. And I just felt like this is unacceptable. Like there's so many children diagnosed with autism now. Like you need to know, you need to do more continuing medical education. There needs to be, you have to have more answers. And because I didn't go to the group kind of stuff, I was basically relying on my doctor-patient relationship to what are the other answers of what else can I do? And so there was always, this, just being a physician, wanting to help people. And I'm just like, my gosh, I can help all these other families that are in this same situation. And why wouldn't I? And
Well, for
there
all the
wasn't
reasons you
really.
described, for the fact that you're a private person, for the fact that people can be
Yeah. Yeah.
and you were so exhausted.
But I remember the heart. I really was sad. It was a really hard time for a number of years. it's like mourning a death, of what you thought your child was going to be. And to be able to offer hope, as you said, he's a tough cookie. You weren't sure if you were ever able to really going to make an impact. He's one of the more all along the spectrum children. And to be able to offer that hope to these other families, I didn't really think twice about it. I really didn't. And another thing that always made me feel sad was holidays. And I know might be a little bit something different that we do at C.H.A.T.S, but I really like holidays. As far as I like celebrating holidays. I like decorating for holidays. I love it. My attic is full of my attic. The only thing in it is everything for holidays. And holidays were so sad. Christmas would come, he's 2, 3, 4, 5. Even now, he doesn't even like to open presents. If you have a bunch of presents in front of him, he might do one and then he's overwhelmed. But back when you were trying to make these great memories and so excited to offer them this great Christmas. It was just awful. He would just put his head down. He was so overwhelmed. He might even have a tantrum, meltdown. It was just this is so sad. And going to see Santa and standing in a line for 45 minutes in a mall where everything's loud but you want to get that Santa picture.
The autism parents. So,
Yeah. It was just all those normal things I didn't really get to do with him. And when I tried them, it was just heartbreaking and it was very stressful and sad. And so one of the things that we do most months of the year is our holiday themed sensory Saturdays. So it's all out in nature and we have the horses involved on most of them. And we have stations set up throughout the land. And if they're not interested in the station, they don't have to, but the stations are usually highly sensory things that are desired by autistic children and crafts. We have higher level autistic kids or teenagers or even young adults that come out and they like to do some of the crafts. I mean, Cole doesn't like to do crafts really at all, but some do. And we really, obviously for like Santa Claus, Easter Bunny, we have them out there. Halloween, they get to, if they want to dress up, they can dress up. But it's it's the right environment for them to be able to celebrate a holiday, and the family gets to celebrate the holiday in the way that the child can. And for me, that is like that was one of my saddest times. Every time there was a big holiday, like him just it wasn't ever a nice memory. So I really like that. I love that I offer that. Unfortunately, today we had our Valentine's Day sensory Saturday, and they said the weather was going to be pouring all day, so we canceled it. And then what happened? It's not even started pouring yet. But I really enjoy that I offer that. And then yeah, just being able to offer the hope of your child being able to speak. I mean, what? I mean, I would have done anything.
Okay. So yeah, you jumped ahead a little bit in the story because you used a name a few moments ago. You said, "Out here at C.H.A.T.S, we do this." At
Mm.
what point did you name your nonprofit, your center, and why did you call it C.H.A.T.S?
Well, actually, Cassie's mother, she's real creative, and we were trying to come up with a name for the nonprofit when we put all the paperwork in. And CHATS stands for Cole's Horse Autism Therapy Station. And, trains are still super important to him. We have Thomas stuff like out all over the land. And I wanted to incorporate trains in it, and then chats because he first started chatting on the horse. And obviously putting in horse in the name, and autism in the name so that people would potentially understand, what we do there. So it is actually Tracy came up with that. We had like lots of people trying to brainstorm, but yeah, that was a great, I was like, yep, that's it. That sounds perfect.
So now here we are in 2025. You've mentioned one of the things that you do is you offer these wonderful holiday events and celebrations, which in America there are many of them. So it's at
Yeah.
least once a quarter, if not once every 6 weeks you're doing. But talk us through the program now at Chats. What do you do? How do you do it? How do you organize it? How does it differ from the local therapeutic riding things around you?
We offer play dates throughout the week, Monday through Friday, and we have a lot of regulars that come like, they come every Friday from 12 to 1 or, that kind of deal. But we're pretty steady Monday through Friday. And then on Tuesday and Thursdays, we offer after school hours because those are the 2 afternoons where I'm not there with Cole at the barn. And then Cole has his play dates with me in the afternoons and then in the mornings. Oh, I didn't mention that in the barn, we actually built a classroom. So he has his classroom there and we still try to do stuff in the classroom and out, and there's a window. And of course the horses are all, in the stalls, in the mornings getting trained, getting ready to be trained or getting the beamer blanket or whatever. So yeah, so we offer private and group playdates. We also do summer camps, which that was like I think the two biggest things are like I get super pumped about our camp and the holiday stuff just because that's just what I like. But my fondest memories of childhood were summer camp, church summer camp. But I did tons of cool things like rock climbing Seneca Rocks in West Virginia. I did that a couple times or, whatever. But, you have great memories from going to camp. And when, again, another thing that I couldn't do with Cole there were no camps. When I would go to look at summer camps, there were no camps around here. So for me to be able to offer, horse boy camp here, I was all about it. And we're now going into our 5th summer, I think, of offering camps. So it's a week-long camp in June and then another one in July. And just this past summer, we were able to extend our hours. So we're now 9 to 12, which was a big deal because it used to just be like an hour long camp, but now we offer 3 hours and we have a lot of community support for that. But that's pretty much what we do in a nutshell. Sensory Saturday. We also offer trainings, right? To schools, to families, to caregivers, any of that stuff. We'll offer trainings to the community in movement method and horseboy method. Lee does that. But I think that's pretty much everything we do there.
If you're a horse nerd, and if you're on this podcast, I'm guessing you are, then you've probably also always wondered a little bit about the old master's system of dressage training. If you go and check out our Helios Harmony program, we outline there step by step exactly how to train your horse from the ground to become the dressage horse of your dreams in a way that absolutely serves the physical, mental, and emotional well-being of the horse and the rider. Intrigued? Like to know more? Go to our website, heliosharmony.com. Check out the free introduction course. Take it from there.
Well, I love the fact that you call them play dates rather than therapy. I've never yet met a kid that wanted therapy. I don't think there's a kid born that comes out of the mother's womb saying, I'd like to go for some therapy today. No kid wants that. Kids want to play. If we can make the play therapeutic without them noticing, well, great. But yeah, we shouldn't burden them with that. So I love that you do that. Talk to us about what happens at a horseboy camp.
We have different themes. Like each day we'll have a theme, like I plan it out ahead of time, and we'll typically have water play. We'll have a water play area. We'll have a sensory play area. We might have a themed, like we do insects that day, or Scooby-Doo stuff. But it's all fun kind of stuff. And then we have the riding part. So we typically will I have 6 kids per camp. So again, it's not like I have 30 kids, but I need 3 people per kid, basically. So that's a lot of volunteers to come up with.
And they all get to go to camp too.
Right. And it's great. Oh my gosh. We have last year we did a Youth Volunteer Corps, which is a national group, and then they have local chapters. Our local chapter actually won the national award for the best youth volunteer group or whatever. And they partnered with us in the June camp. So, it was phenomenal. We had a steady set of 3 teenagers per child the whole week. There was no changing, because normally I have volunteers that can come Monday and Tuesday, but they can't come Wednesday and Thursday. And then you change the volunteer and then the kid, resets potentially. So it was a great experience for them. Some of them were crying at the end of it. Some of them were, just eyes opened because, and I think just less judgmental or less likely to bully or any of that, it's just a great experience. But we'll sort of divide the morning depending on if there's all 6 kids or not. But the first part, half the kids are on the horses. It also depends on how many horses we have that are functioning, if one of them's lame or something. But say the first hour, 3 of the kids are on horses and they're in the back of the land where we have the outdoor sensory classroom and the sensory pond and all this, all that stuff. And the other 3 kids are up playing in the sand in the arena or the water play. We have tons of different water play things that we set up that are rainbow sprinkler things or the slip and slides or, any of that. And then we have themed activities when we're back there. So we might have, Scooby-Doo's on my mind right now for some reason. But I might have Scooby-Doo stuff in the trees and, whatever. And then they go and find it. Or we have a mailbox on site, and on the last day, they always get a letter from the horse saying how much that Hanya loved to be with them this week. And do you want to go play red light, green light? And then, we'll pull out the red light, green light and have them race on the horse. But, just activities like that. And then when it's been about an hour, then they come back up and then the kids switch. And, we try to prevent any type of meltdown with the change. So we sort of maybe might entice them with something else that we know that they really like, so in case they're like not too much wanting to get off the horse, so that we prevent. But I mean, the kids have an amazing time. And I can't tell you how many like emails or text messages I've gotten from the moms in particular, like, thank you so much for giving my child this opportunity to go to camp and to see him happy. And, but, just all the same things that I felt when I was given the opportunities and saw my kid, be happy or say something or, whatever. So I know it's a good thing, and I know it's a needed thing for sure here in the area.
Talk to us about what's on your land. So you've mentioned, sensory play as an outdoor classroom. You've done over the years all sorts of cool things out in those woods. Talk us through the track. So you have to imagine, listeners, that when you arrive at C.H.A.T.S, you're not just sort of going into an indoor arena and that's it. There is a cover, but I would say that occupies the least part of your land and the least part of what's on offer for the people. Take us on a tour.
Right. So yeah, the arena, we're mostly out on the land. The kids like the arena most because of the sand, to play in the sand for the ones that like sand. Most don't in the arena. So we have swings all over property, all different kinds of swings. We have a tree house that we built. We have an obstacle course that has like a shake bridge. And then it leads up into a tree that happened to fallen over, but it still lives. And it's like this way. So the shake bridge then connects and you climb up the tree, and then we put a slide that goes down from the tree and all these different types of swings. There's 2 different zip lines. Brian, who worked for me for over 3 years and was instrumental in Cole's progress, he loved to do this kind of stuff. So he built most of this. He built like a treehouse platform kind of thing in the back of the woods near the sensory classroom. It's so cool. And there's a huge zip line that comes off of that. And then you can also just sit up there and just lay back and you're just looking up in the trees. We have a beautiful swing that's up on the only high part on the land. And it's also there's trees around when you look up. It's you just seeing beautiful branches, and the big lake is right over there. So it's super peaceful. We have a circular compass clock that Brian made. So they're basically just old trees that fell down, and then he made posts going in a circle, and then he put like the numbers to make a clock, and then he put north, south, east, west signs on there. And then so we can go in that circle with the horse and, teach them clockwise, counterclockwise. Oh, we're going west on the land. Maithwaite Drive is going back south on the land. All the trails we have named, we have trail signs up. A lot of them are Thomas Island of Sodor, Thomas the Train, different types of names. Some of them are nature kind of names. We have bird houses all over. We have Leprechaun Way because I'm Irish and I freaking like leprechauns. So we have leprechaun houses, which leads me to St. Patrick's Day. Better not freaking rain because that's a big one. That's usually our most attended one. And I literally let them do leprechaun hunts. Like I hide a leprechaun in a pot of gold in a tree that has like a little opening, and I buy from Amazon. They're real. Pretend that they're real. I buy footprints of leprechauns, and then the kids, we take them on the tractor, we pull them, then they go off running. And then they find the pot of gold, and then they get a goodie bag with all kind of sensory stuff in it. But that's one of the funnest things. But I have those leprechaun houses there all the way. And those kids freaking love like getting off the horse and opening up the little doors and wondering if something's going to come out. We have like obstacle courses for the horses as well back through the woods. We have a bridge that a Boy Scout group built for us a couple years ago. They camped out, and it was like a project for them, and they camped out over the weekend, and the bridge is really awesome. We have sensory walkways that the Youth Volunteer Corps built for us. We also have these they're made from like old roofing pallets. And we have a whole trail of those where you can walk the horse through the trail, and they're on either side. So the kid can like touch them while they're up on the horse, and, all different textures or sounds you can bang or things like that. told you about the mailbox. They like to ride up. That's also on a little hill, and they can ride up and get stuff out of there. It's really natural. I don't, over the years, like, I got a new shed kind of thing to put the tractor in, and then I got another shed to put the ATV in. And so there's a couple like grayish colored sheds that are up near the front, but otherwise it's all just natural.
Yeah, it's one of the things I love most about it. When you go to your place, you see the fields where the horses are out. And also for listeners, although there's a barn with stables and stalls, the horses live out and just sort of come in to be fed and to be made ready for the arrival of the kids. But otherwise, they're having a lovely time out in nice pastures. But what one sees, of course, is that, grass then rolling out to those woods. And then you get in those woods and it's like a magic kingdom that you've built. And I do wish that one saw more of that, rather than like, this is the sensory trail. It's like, no, the entire forest is the sensory trail.
Yeah. Well,
And you could go in there 100 times and not exhaust it. You mentioned somebody called Brian who built a lot of that stuff. And I was lucky enough to meet Brian and train him in some of the things. But where Brian was, rather an exceptional find. And I think it's worth talking about him because when people are looking for help for their kids, there are specific qualities one's looking for and one doesn't always find them, but then occasionally you do. So we talked about Cassie, for example, who is still with Cole and who's incredible, implements movement method with him, but is also just, such an emotional support and, educator as well. So Brian, just talk to us a bit about Brian, I know he's moved to North Carolina now, but who he was, what his skills were, and how that helped Cole. Because I think there's insights there for parents and people running programs.
So there's a lot of insight to be had with this because Brian came to me right when COVID happened and none of the kids were going back to school. And I had two people working for me. One of them had been with Cole for, I think, about 3 years. And the other one had only been with Cole for about a year. And, you always think that, oh, well, this person has a master's in special education or they have all this experience and all this. And I tell you, that was one of the worst fits I ever had, like fit between like an educator and Cole that I had the whole time I did it. And yet, on paper, you think that's what you should do. And you paid way more for that person. And I mean, it was totally not the right fit. And then as it would go, as the phases happened where, you're studying and then all of a sudden somebody leaves, here I am going into that school year and these people stopped working, one because they had to oversee their kid, they're just, so I just have to, okay, I fill in again and I do everything that I can until I can find somebody. And then I put the job out on Indeed. And I don't know if Indeed is in Europe or I think it might be though, but it's a very good job, very good to find people. I only found that a couple of years ago, but I struggled up until then to find good candidates, but I consistently find good candidates from there. But Brian applied to Indeed. And when I first spoke with Brian on the phone, I could tell it was just a little bit different. Like when I would talk, there'd be a longer pause to wait to hear from what his answer was, or sometimes the words would be drawn out a little longer, or, it just wasn't like your normal, like, you and I going back and forth right now. And part of that could have been just nerves on the phone and with him being autistic as well. I don't really know, but I definitely could tell something was different when we first interviewed. And then he came out and I remember crying, all these tears that I've shed over the years. I could make an ocean. But he came out like you, and then I always have them come out and meet me with Cole out at the barn, and Cole was not having a good morning, and Cole had a meltdown right in front of him, and he's doing his crying and screaming and and I'm like, oh my gosh, he's not going to come back. She's not. This is, oh my gosh, I was so upset. And Lee was there. Lee happened to be there, and I just looked at her mind and I'm like, oh my god, he's going good. He's going. And I mean, he was so unfazed by it. He was like, it was like, and like it didn't even affect him. Like it didn't, like he was like, whatever. Meanwhile, like all of our neurotypical cells, they're like, oh, I can't do this. And I mean, it didn't phase him at all. And he was like, oh, it's fine. Next time he'll be fine. And I was just like, oh, okay. And then, he totally still wanted the job. And then, turns out he's on the spectrum, very high functioning. He's a swim coach. An equestrian. He like all the he loves to teach. He like all the boxes you're looking for. It was just unbelievable. And he became like Cole's just person. I mean, outside of Cassie, Brian was able to like academically help him so much and just was never fazed by his behavior, and I have just this different understanding of his mind because, he's on the spectrum too, stuff that we couldn't understand or that I didn't understand or, he was always just this kind of calm with him. And when he and I would teach together, I mean, it was easy. It was just so easy. We would just go back and forth. And he got Cole to learn how to ride independently. Anya, I could just go on and on. He's the one that finally got Cole to be able to ride his bike independently. I don't know. I mean,
I remember being
left.
blown away with you sending me pictures of Cole jumping Diego. Jumping.
No, yeah.
I remember you sending me those and me just going, shit. That's
right.
mind-blowing. Academically, where did he get Cole and how did he get him there?
Oh, I mean, just doing the same, things that I was telling you. Cassie very much has been like, I'll review everything, come up with ideas, and then she very much helps stuff. But she's laminating all these.
Okay.
So she would make all the laminated things with the Velcro and all kinds of other things too. But Brian was able to really get him far. I don't even know like how to say specific examples, but what I do know is she would send me videos pretty much on a daily basis of what he was doing with Cole. He also got him very independent. He got him to be able to feed himself his peanut butter pretzels, which is like his mid-morning snack, and then close up his stuff and put it back in his bag. And, I was just always so used to feeding him because he wouldn't eat or, carrying all this stuff because he wouldn't carry it. And Brian sort of was like, you can carry this, dude. You're like 12, 10, 11, 12, 13. Like, it's good to have a outside person to look in and hey, well, maybe we can pull back on that now because you get so used to being the caregiver mode that you don't realize that sometimes you're making it worse instead of trying to get it more independent by still doing something that you had to do before, but maybe you don't have to now. So it was good to have like that outside perspective of that with some of this stuff. Sure, Cole. But just on so many levels. Cole started to, this isn't necessarily a movement method, but Cole started to love roller coasters. He wouldn't, for a long time, like you take him to the amusement park and the thing that pulls down over you, it would just be too like that would make him panicky, anxious that he couldn't get out. So he didn't do it. And then maybe like 2 years ago now, Brian happens to love roller coasters. So now like Cole rides anything, like anything that flips, turns, goes upside down, like all the crazy stuff. He's all about it. But it was just nice to have a person who enjoyed that stuff too and like loved to go too. And then I didn't have to vomit after going off the ride. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it was just really nice and he loved the ocean. So like literally this past summer, every Tuesday, we took Cole to the ocean so he could swim in the ocean. And Brian would go out with him. And, we started taking Cole to the pool during the winter months because our pool closes and then Cole goes nuts without going in the water. So Brian took him to the local aquaplex and got him independent and like dressing himself, drying himself off, knocking on the door before he went in to the changing room. I mean, I've never had Cole knock on a door. I lead him. Every time I'm with Cole out in a public setting, I'm like, how quickly can I get through this? Because what's he going to do? Because whereas Brian, in that setting, Brian has the time. He's got nothing but the 3.5, 4 hours hey, we got all the time. You don't feel like doing it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like Cole, I have to hurry up and put clothes on Cole because we need to get somewhere. Brian can sit there. No, put it there, Anyway, you just really helped a lot
Yeah, I think
in
that
so many.
one of the things which doesn't often occur is if one's running something around autism, or indeed around any neurodivergent thing, is to look for staff that have the condition. One might think, oh, well, would they be resilient enough, or would they be able to? And as you found with Brian, the answer was a resounding yes. I would say that,
Mhm.
you know, every time I would come out, I would see a new academic milestone. I'd see a new life skill, and as you
Right,
said, Brian
right.
was sort of un, unflappable. Also, he
Sure.
was a guy that, yeah, but who's also building you all this stuff, like these tree houses and things.
More.
So, you know, I think one of the morals of that story is to encourage people to maybe actively look for people on the spectrum. Now, obviously that can be a
Yeah.
minefield, but certainly have that as an asset in a team member, because,
Right.
ironically, people often say, oh, would they have the empathy? It seems that the answer would be yes, from what we saw. You've also got someone else really good on your team on the equestrian side. You've got Lee. Just talk to us a little bit about Lee, and then I'd like after that for you to tell us where Cole is at now.
Okay. Well, Lee has been sort of my right-hand woman. She has been nothing but supportive. She's a UVA grad. She was a career woman and then decided she really wanted to stay home with her kids and, just do some part-time work. And she reached out to me whenever I was looking for an equestrian. And I mean, she's just been really amazing. She's gone through all the certifications with you. She's allowed us to be able to, certify people here at C.H.A.T.S. She helps train any new, equestrians that come on board and does the training in communities. And I mean, she's just a down to earth woman who really has a kind heart and loves to ride horses.
Right, and she's a really, really skilled horsewoman, and I think that,
Yes.
again, this is something which is often so lacking. Not always, but it's not always prioritized within equine-assisted stuff, which is that, you know, people who've really had a career in horses, she's a hunter jumper, she still works at a hunter jumper barn. It's not that you necessarily have to be that, but it doesn't hurt, to have people that really do understand what it takes to keep horses sound, to prepare horses, to put muscle on horses, to top line horses, to make sure horses get the trail rides that they need, to make sure horses, if they like to jump, get those jumping sessions, to make sure that the horse is at the best they can be when that
Right.
walks into the property. So much work goes into that, rather than just saying, well, this horse is sort of quiet, we'll just pull him in from the field and there we go. Every time I come out to you, the horses look so good. The top lines are lovely and curvy. They've got big butts, big necks. Their coats are glossy. They're fit, and they show up ready for action with enthusiasm and generosity. And I just want to take my hat off to Lee. And again, I think for people who are listening, the moral of the story is, do look for people who have a really solid horse background. That said, obviously they can be terribly bossy and opinionated and not always a good fit. But Lee seems to be able to, tread that line between just being a, sound human being and have those skills. So, it was so interesting to me that you sort of went from having to take any dysfunctional person you could find who just knew something about horses, and then you end up with this kind of dream team.
Yeah.
There's a lot for us to learn in that learning curve. Tell us, I think this is what we all want to know now. Where's Cole at now?
Cole is going to be 14 in May. And he continues to progress with his academics. He can add, subtract, multiply, which was something I tried years to see. I tried so many different ways. And then it's like, try 100 times, but it's that 101st time that that's how he wanted to learn it. And the 100 other ways were not the right way. But then, it's just definitely a testament to keep reinventing how you might teach something. Obviously, keeping the environment right with being outside and movement. But, it just might be that 101st time that makes it so they know how to do it. But we've been working on division now for most of this school year. And it's definitely, I can see it clicking in his head when we do all the problems. He also likes dry erasers. So like we have like a dry erase division board, like where he can do the problem. And, it's all about finding out what they like to use or what makes them stay attentive and then individualizing that particular lesson to it. It's a lot of extra work, but I mean, it made the difference. So we're still working on reading, and we have some evidence that he can read. And then there's other ways, though, we're teaching it, it's like it doesn't connect. And I think that's just because we don't really understand how it's connecting in his brain or how he's processing it. I did have a dyslexia evaluation for the first time. I could have never even done that in years past because he wouldn't have been verbal enough to do it or anything. I literally just had that like less than 2 weeks ago. They came to the house and did it. And while they couldn't fully score it because he couldn't answer all of it, I was really proud of him for, the parts that he could do and respond back to. From a food standpoint, the boy is like almost 5'10" now, size 13 shoe, 215 pounds, I'd say. He's a beast. He's solid muscle. I mean, he's on the horse like 5 days a week, most of them twice a day. I mean, he's pretty solid from a muscle standpoint, and he loves to jump on the trampoline always and swims throughout the year. So physically, he's pretty big boy. Behaviorally, we've had some new things just because he's going through puberty. So that's just fun. We can leave that at that. And there's still always challenges with him. I mean, I can't say anything's different about like the fact that I can't take Cole over to my friend's house for a party. I don't know that that's ever going to change. He doesn't, if I try to go into Target real quick for something, God help me, like he'll just start. He does stuff to make you upset so that you will get out of there as quickly as possible. He knows exactly what he's doing, but he'll start laughing so loud, and then he'll scream at the end of the laugh, and then he'll start jumping up and down, or he'll drop down to the ground and he'll laugh, giggle. I mean, everybody, like the whole store thinks that there's like someone coming out with a gun and is going to kill them or something because Cole's so loud, and everybody's looking at you. I mean, so it's not like the crying meltdowns anymore, like of years past. It's
that sounds more mischievous. That sounds more.
Yeah, I'm going to embarrass the shit out of you until you get me out of here.
Cognitive. That's like, I don't know.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Intelligent and thought out, right. Well executed, like well played.
Very well played. Yeah. So he does that a lot. He's a funny boy. We've really seen his funny personality come out. He's a real jokester. He really is. He's funny. And as far as like talking, oh my gosh, he talks so much now. It's still not like if I demand a conversation like, Cole, how was your day? That doesn't happen. But he will speak in full sentences about how he feels or something that he's thinking about or what he saw. I mean, that was a dream I was chasing for years. And I have every belief that this will just continue. I mean, every year he's shown more and more progress. There's no reason why that wouldn't continue to happen. I just, I still have the hopes of many things for him, and I am just going to keep doing what I'm doing and try to see if there's anything else, that comes out that I need to add or whatever. But I mean, I would say we are like in a night and day picture from when you first met him. And it's still.
When you say about what he thinks, he tells you about what he thinks. Give us some examples of that. What are some things that he said?
When you're driving and say you hit a pothole or something, and be like, "Oh my!" Or he'll say, "You bumped." Or I was putting on this was like unbelievable. And this is why I still need to get one of those cameras that's put on your head or something that watches everything. This was like around Halloween the year before. And I love like Charlie Brown's Peanut stuff. So we all dressed up as Peanuts characters. And he was Charlie Brown. And I had these cool Charlie Brown. It was like the actual face of Charlie Brown's socks that he wore as part of the outfit. And then afterwards, I would put them on him at bedtime because, it was getting cold out. And one night we were going to bed. We were not speaking. We were both tired. He was getting in bed. And I normally put the socks on because they were too tight, but he acted like he wanted to put them on. So I was like, oh, okay, here. And he started to put them on and he couldn't get them on because they were so tight. And then I was like, here, okay, you want me to help you? And I start putting them on and he goes, good grief. Like, I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding. It's a good, and then I get my mom's screeching voice again. And now I record him regularly saying Charlie Brown kind of stuff or whatever. But I mean, he'll tell the boys to quiet down, his twin brothers he'll just point out things. Oh, Ashton was practicing a speech that he has for this Black History Month project. And he came over to Ashton afterwards and he said, good job. Like, what? Like, I don't know. He'll say, I love you to me, at bedtime. He'll tell me sweet dreams. I mean, it's just shit like that would just never happen. There would just be no time. He tells you like that he wants to go in the woods if he doesn't want to keep, lunging. I mean, these are just small examples, but there's bigger examples that are just not coming to my head right now. But he'll answer me now when I say, do you want yogurt? Before it was just, he would never answer no matter what. And he'll say yes or no now, or he'll tell you what he wants ahead of time. I mean, it was just, that was never before. You always just had to figure it out, wing it, figure out what was wrong. But, sometimes I still have to figure out what is wrong but most of the time he tells me now. Like, I mean, like if he got hurt or if his stomach hurts, then he can take a shower. He can do a shower all on his own now. I mean, I took a shower with him for years, actually, all the way up till probably like 6 months ago. I mean, he's not paying attention to what I look like. I was just in there assisting him, and now he'll shampoo, conditioner. He washes his face because, now he's at the age of getting acne. He does his whole body with the soap. He has the whole routine. He's styling. He's learning how to style his hair now with the goop stuff. Like,
Really?
He's learning a lot of independent life skills.
Yeah. he
He feeds himself the yogurt now. Like, even all the way up till like 4 months ago, I would still have to feed him yogurt every time. But he would let Brian, he feed himself yogurt with Brian. But with me, it was just still this like,
You were fair game.
game. Yeah. And finally, what got him to count to eat it was we started counting. He likes to count. And so I was like, oh, count. Well, how many? 1, 2, 3. And then now we do it like that. And he takes them and he starts counting. And then I know he has a yogurt. I'm like, oh, and then I keep counting. And sometimes I'll go really fast so I can hear him say the higher numbers because he knows all that stuff. But, after you've asked him so many times, he doesn't want to tell you anymore. And then when I have new people that can get involved, then they think he doesn't know stuff because he won't answer them. But it's because he answered it 5,000 times before, and it's just he's done. And so that's a frustrating part still, especially when I have staff turnover because, if he doesn't answer it a certain way, then you think he doesn't know it. And that's just not the case at all, So I'll like go higher numbers. I'll go real fast. And I'll go to like 25 and then I get to hear him say 26, which I otherwise would probably never get to hear him say, So
How is he with his brothers?
he's very good with his brothers. He'll really roughhouse with me or we, like he'll come up and especially now that, teenage puberty kind of stuff, he'll come over and he'll just like shove me in the back or he'll come over and pinch and, when he wants to make you play with him and he really likes to roughhouse, like push back and forth and, pretend like you're, whatever. But with his brothers, he doesn't do that with them at all. I mean, he knows like they're smaller, but he does, they do really well together in the pool. So they can really relate as like brothers in the pool and then just on the trampoline. And I would say those are the two areas where like I feel like they act brotherly, and then like when I need a break now, at least the twins are old enough where I can be like, you go roughhouse with Cole now. Like you give mommy a break. And then they have a blast. I mean, Cole's laughing and giggling. Cole's running away from him. Then Cole's chasing them. Then, they're running after him. I mean, that, I couldn't do that a couple years ago just because they were still so little. But now, they're pretty strong and they're old, I'm not saying like he won't pinch them sometimes, but as far as like the real roughhousing, he does not like hurt them or, he'll come and just sit on me. You know what I mean? Like he'll just, but the twins, he doesn't do that kind of stuff to them. So he's, overall very kind to them.
You've brought this kind of full circle in that you started as a doctor. Despite being a doctor, there were no answers. You had to go out and formulate answers. And then being a doctor, as you said, even when you were trying to find a support group, then being a physician, sort of blew your cover in a way and isolated you further. And yet now you've broken ground, you've managed to get the medical establishment to begin to accept things like movement method. Talk to us about what's going on with Eastern Virginia Medical School and all of that, because I think this is where it's going for a lot of our work and where it needs to go as we sort of come from the hippie fringes where we've been for so long, now edging into the mainstream. Talk to us about what's happened there.
Well, one of my physician friends and colleagues who's in the pediatric world had connected me with the director of the annual Autism updates conference that they have at Eastern Virginia Medical School each year, which is in February each year. And Eastern Virginia Medical School is the closest like academic medical center near us. Then the next closest would be like VCU in Richmond. But I reached out to that physician and said that I would like to be able to present at your conference. And he brought it to their planning committee and they said yes. And then that's when I brought you over in February of, what would have that been? We just did this in 24.
23, I think.
23.
23.
23, I think. February of 23. And so we presented at the medical school there for the autism conference, and it went very well. There was like a line of people waiting to talk to me when I went out to the bathroom after the talk, and to you. And then I was contacted after asking if I was interested in creating my own neuroscience-based conference on movement method. And I was like, hell yes. And so then I relayed the news to you, and then we got our planning committee together, and you came up with a lot of the people who have helped you formulate this over the years and or who implement it. And I did the more academic medical side, putting together a meeting side, all the continuing medical education side of stuff, which is a ton of online forms and regulations and things that you have to meet. And then we pulled it off in September of 24. And I think it was phenomenal. It was very well received. All the feedback from the medical community that attended it was really positive. And actually, after that conference, Mark Lobel, who introduced himself to you, who's the head of the Virginia Autism Foundation, he's a big supporter of C.H.A.T.S. There were some teachers in the audience that had reached out to him and wanted to implement movement method into the classrooms. And he funded like all the stuff that they needed for, like he, as in Virginia Autism Foundation, voted to fund those teachers for their classrooms. So we already did make an impact somewhat locally in the school system.
What school is that in Virginia that's doing that?
Well, it's just some individual teachers that attended the conference. It wasn't like a whole school.
Right, but which schools are they at? Out of interest?
I think it's Newport News. I think Julia's in Newport News. I have to ask.
Are these elementary schools or high school?
Elementary special ed.
Elementary special ed. Newport News Elementary
Mhm.
special ed. Are they all from the same school, or were they from?
No, there were two. There were three, I think. One was in Virginia Beach.
Mhm.
And she actually came and did a training in movement method at the barn with Lee. And the other lady, I can't remember off the top of my head. But also through that, there's a place called Maverick Learning, which is an autism school that was created in Chesapeake, which is about 45 minutes from here. It's still part of Hampton Roads. And we are doing a training in their school. So this is the first time we're going into a school and training. Lee's doing it in March. It's like a 1-day thing on the teacher, like they're like, I can't come up with a word, but anyway, we're doing a training there. But the conference, was very well received, and we plan to do one again in 2026. Kelly's still getting a date.
Perfect. So listeners, listen out for that, because this was groundbreaking, what happened in 24, the first neuroscience conference for movement method, for the work we were all doing in a medical school. The more of these we do, the more kids and families like us are going to get helped. So we will be announcing that well in advance, so that those of you that want to come over for it in Virginia Beach, it's going to be in Norfolk, Virginia, can attend. And if you can't attend in person, obviously you can attend online. But it's really I see Cole in the background there. He's cute.
Hey, Cross. Hey, Coach. You say hi? No.
Yeah. Hey, Cole, don't worry. You don't have to. It's me. Yeah. Hey,
Say
Cole,
hi. Hooray.
great to see you. Getting teenagers. Do not make me say hi.
Right.
So big.
He is. He's huge. I keep lifting weights so that I can mess him up if he tries to mess me up.
Yeah, attack is the best form of defense.
Yeah.
So Megan, you've achieved so much. Where do you want to take it? What's next?
I want to keep expanding it in a medical platform. I really want to get it in other meetings across the country. I want it to become like standard of care. So when you go to see your family practice doctor, your pediatrician, the developmentalist, the neurologist, that not only do they say speech therapy, occupational therapy, ABA, but they also say movement method. It just needs to be part of daily practice recommendations. And that is one of my biggest goals. Secondary would be, getting as many children that I can out to C.H.A.T.S and getting it fully sponsored. This lighting is horrible. And, continuing. And then thirdly, to continue my son's journey to potentially, I don't know, healing with some quirks.
Yeah. Well, the quirks are the magic.
It's telling me enough is enough. Okay.
Okay.
Hold on.
One last question before we let you go, and Cole is quite right, because we've been at this for a while. How can people find you? How can people find C.H.A.T.S online? How can people find out information about trainings that you're doing at C.H.A.T.S?
The website is... Hold on.
Take a look. He
wants to take a bath.
Yeah, me too.
The website is www.chats757.com. The Facebook is the @ and then Cole's Horse Therapy, all one word. We're also on Instagram, but I don't remember the info for that, but you could find it on the website for sure. But that's pretty much where our main stuff is.
Chats757.com, 757 being the area code, and on Facebook at Cole's Horse Therapy.
Right.
Yeah.
The Facebook page is pretty active. I try to post on that, most days of the week with what's going on or something that's happened or, whatever.
So listen, listeners, if you're a parent, if you're a practitioner, if you're a horse person, if you're a teacher, anywhere on the East Coast of the USA, you want to be looking to this work that's going on at C.H.A.T.S and now at Eastern Virginia Medical School as well. Hit Megan up. She will get back to you. She's a powerhouse, as you can see, and she'll help you. Megan, it's been an absolute delight.
Thank you. And I guess I would sort of like to end it with, I guess, two things. Thank you so much for helping me change his life. I really am forever indebted for that. And then secondly, I'd like to remember Mahanya, who just passed away, So she died like about 8 days ago. So rest in peace. But she served a lot of children and changed so many lives.
She did. And she herself was a rescue horse. She had come out of a not so great situation in Mexico. And as you say, turned into the most giving, generous horse. But a lot was given back to her. She gave so much love. So people gave love back to her. And I would say that was a horse that really had a life well lived and a death well died. I mean, a self-actualized equine life, and you're certainly exemplary in your care for her. So I'm grateful to you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay.
All right. Well, till the next time. So it's going to be the next thing pushing forward for this next conference in 2006. I guess.
Yes.
Get our britches on.
Right.
We'll be talking then.
Okay.
All right. Till next time.
Okay. Take care. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I did. If you like what we're doing here, please do like, subscribe, tell a friend. It so helps us to get this valuable work done and the message of equine-assisted stuff out there. And if you're interested in more conversations, you might want to check out our Live Free, Ride Free podcast. And if you'd like to support the podcasts, please go to rupertisaacson.com and click on the Patreon link. If you're a professional in the equine-assisted field or are considering a career in the equine-assisted field, you might want to check out our 3 certification programs: Horseboy Method, Movement Method, and Taquine Equine Integration. You can find all of those over on newtrailslearning.com. And finally, if you want to check out our cool rock and roll themed merch, back on rupertisaacson.com, please click on shop. You'll find all kinds of fun goodies there. And if you're looking for a way to spend time until the next podcast, you might want to consider reading the books that kicked all this off: The Horseboy, The Long Ride Home, and The Healing Land. So see you next time on Equine Assisted World. Join us for the adventure.